stay consistent, posting daily, whether it be a quote, a text post, a video, an audiogram. Repurpose, guys, as much as possible. There's a lot of great content. There's a lot of relevant information in some of these shows that can be used over and over again. You know, what can I make with a franchise business? Well, that's like saying, what can I make with any stock? And there's thousands and thousands of companies out there. So let's dive in a little deeper.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your Franchise Guide. Thanks for joining us today. Really exciting episode. Wanted to mix things up a little bit and talk about kind of getting into the business and things to consider, whether it's a franchise or not, and talking about my top three marketing tips that I live by, and I highly recommend to everyone, and really kind of simplifying the process. So, number one, we had a show, a two-part series with Marcus Sheridan, the author of They Ask You Answer, and we talked about what customers, what clients, future clients want to be reading about and having an understanding, and really just laying it out. Getting questions on a daily basis from either customers or clients and answering them. And being as open and honest as possible. I know, we were kind of joking around with Marcus, and he said, well, if you kind of look at your own way of doing research, if you go to a website and pricing is not listed on the website, and keeping in mind, it's if it's project based, you at least want a range or something to work off of. That if I don't see pricing even mentioned, I go to the second Google listing and move forward, and don't even set up that first call just to get pricing. So unless it's something very specific, like what's an addition on my home, which is going to obviously be very specific, but kind of looking at your own patterns and ways of searching things. So Marcus really talks about just answering and covering the concerns, the myths, the ranges. Being okay with mentioning your competitors and kind of what they're doing. If you specialize in one area, and I think we were talking about they specialize in vinyl, but they talked about concrete and fiberglass and things like that, types of pools. It's okay. Your customers want that information and they appreciate it. Just because you're talking about customer or different way in our world, franchising versus licensing, it's good. People want to be well educated in order to make the most informed decisions. So I think being very clear, and this is simply going through and jotting down every question you get on a daily basis, concerns you get, where people get stuck in the process, confusion, myths and misconceptions, and just about anything else you can think of. And, being okay with just getting that question, doing a search on it. Maybe there's different spins or different ways that people ask the question, but are looking essentially for the same answers. So doing a search. So I think that's a great starting point. And if that's all you did, I think you'd be in a much better place answering people's questions, as opposed to going through the whole story of what your company does and just diving right in. There'll be a post on maybe who the business is, but exactly who you assist and the pressing questions people have that are looking to get answered right away. So because sometimes those concerns are so big that that client or their potential client or customer never moves forward. They never set up that call because they think franchising is all fast food and it's $1 million or more. So they kind of disqualify themselves without really understanding exactly what's involved and what options people have in a franchise. So They Ask You Answer. I'll link the past two episodes, and I think that alone, you can build a pretty robust marketing engine. Adding to the fuel there, I think the second piece of advice is you need to stay consistent. Social media, if someone misses that post for the day, odds are they're not seeing it, right? Sometimes it pops up and the algorithms are constantly changing, but posting daily, whether it be a quote, a text post, a video, an audiogram, whatever it is, putting that information out daily for the algorithms and being on a few platforms. Now, Marcus recommends sticking to one, learning it really well, like LinkedIn, before moving on to others. So that's a great starting point. because you want to be, on each platform, you're going to post differently. Instagram will want more photos. Maybe LinkedIn will be more text, or Twitter will be more text, or X, I should say. So, take a look and you'll start to learn the different platforms. So those are the platforms that we don't have much control over. Where we have a lot of control is our website. So in anything we're posting, part of this strategy too is, it doesn't have to be necessarily daily, but it could be a weekly blog. Maybe like I do for my show, it's a weekly blog that includes the Buzzsprout embed for the audio of the podcast, as well as the YouTube, and then an actual article if people prefer to read. So that's the stuff you own, and that's how you build your SEO engine, and start really building some traction to the website. In the event, a TikTok goes down, or Instagram is down, or two platforms merge. And this is free platforms that are out of our control. So that's another big recommendation is be relevant, post daily, and that you'll just like we did, you'll start to have people, qualified individuals, contact you because they are absorbing the content. They're seeing the questions that you're answering on a daily basis. And a big part of this, and this is part 3, and they all essentially tie together, is repurpose as much as possible. You're going to have 3 to 4, maybe 5 main talking points, things that you want to hammer home. You may start off with something you're most comfortable with, and that may be a podcast. And that podcast, just because you're not shy of the camera, you like to speak, and it may be a 20, 30-minute podcast that may be converted into a blog, that may get converted into 5 snippets or shorts, an audiogram, maybe a carousel, and a few others. So repurposing where you can. As I mentioned, on social media, people may not be on a daily, so they may have missed a previous post. You may have done a long form podcast that individual did not have time to listen to, but all of a sudden you have a carousel that talks about the 3 top 10 3 recommendations for marketing. Now it's like, okay, you grab the interest, and then they go back and maybe listen to that episode, or they didn't have access to internet to download the video, or they're just it's audio just because of the work environment, or whatever the case may be. It's great to repurpose because it's getting a lot more eyeballs. You're creating this sense of omnipresence where you're kind of all over, standing out as the brand authority in that business, and really getting access to different markets, demographics. Some people are hanging out more on Instagram, others are on LinkedIn, or they do more business on LinkedIn, and maybe they hang out and more personal on Instagram and the various other platforms. So just to recap, they ask you answering your customers and clients' future questions and questions that you're getting on a daily basis. You can include what you can anticipate, but listen to their questions. Dig in a little bit deeper, because one question, you dive in a little bit deeper. So, what can I make with a franchise business? Well, that's like saying, what can I make with any stock? And there's so many, there's thousands and thousands of companies out there. So let's dive in a little deeper. So what are you really asking? We break it down. Okay, well, this is funding. You have gross profit margins, but where do you find the information on what each location or territory can make? Anyway, we'll fast forward. Next, be relevant and post daily on multi-platforms, including a bare minimum a weekly post on your website where you have full control. And repurpose, guys, as much as possible. There's a lot of great content. There's a lot of relevant information in some of these shows that can be used over and over again. And I'm not saying, repurpose it for the entire week, but maybe it's some main marketing tips and that go out a couple times a month that talk about similar things, maybe different scenarios and things like that. So those are my 3 marketing tips. Now, when it comes to a franchise, certain franchise companies will have turnkey marketing where you're kind of taking not a backseat, but you're reviewing the KPIs, making sure the marketing is working, the lead quality is there, and sales are closing these leads and these appointments and things like that. Others will, they'll give you more of the marketing asset to deploy. You see that in B2B where the asset's there and then you're on your own to post to social media. But you essentially have the autonomy to run with it with whatever medium you're most comfortable with. Is podcast better than a workshop or a blog? No. excuse me, just different ways, which are you going to be more consistent with is my advice. So those are my tips. Hope you enjoyed them. Let me know if you have any questions. Looking forward to your comments. Talk to you soon, guys. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.